Psalm 126 gives us an agricultural paradigm for a spiritual application that is very much in line with tonight. We have said starting out, belief in the resurrection to come motivates otherwise unjustifiable sacrifices in the here and now for the sake of the church. The same thing we could say in an agricultural term. You could say, belief in the harvest motivates otherwise unjustifiable burial of food. There's a great story that comes from an African missionary who was Western missionary who was in Africa on the field, and it was his great horror to see many people starving. But one harvest that was particularly harsh and difficult, there was a family not far outside of the local village that he served, and in that family there was a father and a son, and they got to the end of the harvesting, not the harvest time yet, but towards the end of the year, where the food was running low. So their stores, their sacks of grain that they would make their bread, make their flour, make their food with, they was running very low. Stores were slim to begin with, and now they were all just about run out. And towards the last weeks of what looked like their storage, they were coming down to maybe only a few more weeks left. The father took what was left on his back, marched out into the dirt, and started throwing the food away. And a son came out screaming at his father, at this point of the year, malnourished, skinny, very little food. Comes out and he starts screaming at his dad to stop. Please, Dad, stop wasting our food. Maybe the hunger had gotten to the father and he'd become almost suicidal or crazed. And there he is just throwing the food at the ground. And the son starts to try and pick it up. And so he pulled him away. He said, "No, son." He starts kicking dirt over it so that his son wouldn't be able to pick up the dirt. And the son is sitting there in the dirt weeping at his father's reckless abandon. And the father is here weeping at his son's weeping, because what the son sees his father doing makes no sense. He's a boy, he doesn't get it. What his father is throwing away is the seed of the grain that will be next year's harvest. And so they will go weeks, even months, with bare minimum food to eat. In villages like this, sometimes they eat dust and bark and leaves just to make by. But soon the harvest will come. Any family that stores up for themselves and keeps for themselves that last batch, those last few weeks and months worth of grain, so that they can keep on eating throughout the winter, will get to springtime and have nothing left. The families who are willing to go through the pain of the sacrifice, the pain of the investment, and have very little to eat for months of winter, would find that in the spring, the harvest is plentiful. The more they were willing to go without, the more they would have to eat in just a few months. The son had no concept of the harvest. He was a young boy. The father, believing in the harvest, was making otherwise unjustifiable acts of burying food. You don't do that in famine. You don't take the last of what you have and bury it in the dirt so it can't be eaten. You do if it's seed. You do if there is a harvest. Psalm 126 uses this exact analogy. In verse 4, it is a prayer. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the streams in the Negeb. Those who sow to the point of tears shall reap with shouts of joy. We can reverse it. Those who fail to sow so that they do not and are not driven to the point of crying or suffering, they will reap nothing with shouts of horror. Those who sow to the point of tears shall reap with shouts of joy. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, crying with every sacrifice because it is genuinely painful, because the hunger pains demand that you eat what is in the hand instead of burying it in the ground. He who goes out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying his sheaves with him. to his starving family, to his hungry wife, to his malnutrition children, piling up the sheaves of wheat and grain and all of this to bring it home and slam it down on the dinner table and say, we have grain for another year. We can eat. Cook a bun or a croissant or whatever your culture does. We can eat. Those who sacrifice are those who receive great reward, is the agricultural one-to-one principle. It almost sounds dumb that an adult would say this to other adults. The more seed goes in the ground, the more plants pop up. Let's just take a moment for that. That's so obvious. Here's what's lesser known. It's the same principle in the spiritual realm. The more we sacrifice, the more we can be used of God in spiritual harvest in this life. And the more we sacrifice and suffer in this life, the more the day of resurrection, which Paul calls in 1 Corinthians 15, the day of the harvest, when all of the harvest of Jesus saved ones, our bodies will rise up out of the ground like an immediate bursting forth of a harvest. That's our resurrection day. On the day of the resurrection, we will receive, as verse 10 tells us, on our judgment day, we will receive blessings and rewards for whatever we have done in the body. So this is the principle at play in tonight's passage. Paul believes, Paul teaches, Paul lives, Paul exemplifies that belief in our coming resurrection justifies and motivates otherwise unjustifiable sacrifices for the sake of the church in the Great Commission.